How are you? I think we
Good.
missing Chava. How are
All
you?
good. I don't know where he went. He doesn't have any dogs to medicate. I don't know what that's about.
He's from the little I know, he's a party animal. So maybe he joined a party.
It's
Oh,
right. He found one in the 3 minutes we were gone. That sounds like Java.
yeah. So in the meantime, while we're waiting for Shava, Lou, let's talk about how we connected. And first of all, welcome to this quick event of Norfolk Wine and Spirits and Norfolk Whiskey Group. We have a couple of very interesting guests. I mean, something that we're not really
Hey, hey,
do.
hey, 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 don't you gotta downplay it. You've got some
Downplay.
very average, mediocre
We
guests.
have very average, mediocre people, and
Perfect. Thank you.
and I think that's what we want to be. Average and mediocre. Uh,
Yes.
so, but there's some good news that you got today that you told me earlier. But nobody knows who Lou Banks is. You don't own a distillery. You're not into, um, you're not into making wine. So, Lou, would love to know a little bit about yourself and how we connected. And I think it's a fun story. So why don't we hear it from you?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Vikram. So I started this non-for-profit. Ugh. I started this non-for-profit called S.A.C.R.E.D, which is an acronym that stands for Saving Agave for Culture, Recreation, Education, and Development. And I started it shortly after, like on the third or fourth trip that I took down to Mexico, after becoming completely obsessed with heritage agave spirits. What most people would call mezcal, what they certainly would call mezcal in the communities where it's made. And I've been living in the world of non-for-profits for about 25 years now. And when I went down into Mexico and I saw what they were doing and how they were doing it, it makes you stop and question where you are in the world. And what I mean by that very specifically is, you know, it used to be that everything was distilled in the way that they're distilling it in rural Mexico, and yet the rest of the world by and large moved on, and here you've got these islands that didn't. And this is sort of the liquid presentation, if you will, of the way that they've held on to this worldview that most of us have abandoned. And I think that there is something very important in that worldview that can help us solve problems like water insecurity and food insecurity and climate change. And I'm afraid that we are at risk of destroying that world, of making it part of our own world by drinking as much tequila and mezcal as we drink. I'm not saying don't drink it. I'm saying let's be smart about how we're consuming, and let's support these communities that are at risk of disappearing because of our consumption, give them more financial support, and make sure that they are still in existence because we're going to need them to move forward as a species. That was a whole lot. I don't think I took a single breath, Bikram.
That was amazing.
So,
That was
so
amazing. So,
thank you. So,
so
so
one question I have before I lose my train of thought. So you said this is as you traveled through three or four times, and what just to provide some context, what year are we talking about?
Okay, so I started drinking mezcal in 2005. I started visiting Oaxaca in 2008. Initially, it was once or twice a year, and it very quickly, within 3 years, became something more like 4 to 6 times a year. Now I'm heading down to Mexico 8 to 10 times a year, much to my wife's chagrin. But we're doing the nonprofit Sacred is doing so many more. Hey, there's Java is doing so many more projects that I need to be down there more often. And thankfully, we have Chava, both my podcast co-host, because we do a podcast called Agave Road Trip, which is how I found you when I was
Right,
Googling
right up
myself.
there.
There it is.
That's the one.
Yeah. So Chava is the my podcast co-host for Agave Road Trip, and he's the boots on the ground in Mexico for Sacred, managing most of the projects that we're doing down there.
Trying to.
Welcome, Chava. Welcome to our basically the questions are going to be simple because
Absolutely.
this is a very average interview. So we're going to try to keep it average. You missed
Yes.
a preamble on this, but
Keep it down,
so
look. Keep it
so
down.
tell us about yourself a little bit and how you got involved in this project. Not only the the road trip, but also Sacred. So that some people can understand.
Perfect. It's my turn. You already did your thing, right, Lou?
Oh, we've been
Yeah.
talking for
In the
15
middle of
minutes.
Oh,
I don't know where you've
Jesus.
been, Chava.
Well, you said 10
We
minutes.
assume
Okay.
we assumed that you ran away and found a party. We weren't going to see
Oh,
you again.
sorry. I
in the
understood.
US, the time is much faster.
I understand that. So
Rapido,
maybe that's
rapido.
maybe that's where I start, right? Well, my name is Salvador Peribán. Everybody calls me Chava because Salvador seems a little bit too heavy. And I started in Agave Spirits without knowing that I was starting to work in Agave Spirits. Actually met this crazy man called Lou Bank, maybe was it 13 years ago, I believe? I don't know what's time.
It was not 13 years ago.
Well, he has looked equally old all this time. I don't know. He has put that together, but I've done a bunch of stuff. I've run a distillery while I was in charge of the head of distillation for Sombra for a while. I've done research and development. I've designed distilleries as well, tried to get them to a more sustainable operation, which is a rather challenging thing to do. And then I started doing the podcast with Lou because we realized that in your country, in the US of A, in a lot of the English spoken world, there's a tremendous enthusiasm for agave spirits, but not necessarily a bunch of resources to get savvy about it, right? Because, I mean, you're saying you're specialized in Scotch. If I want to get savvy in Scotch, there's a multitude of books, videos, classes, workshops, you name it. There's a bunch of amazing educational resources. Agave spirits, because it's not such a long-lived industry, is just starting to have that. So yeah, that's
Well, God,
where we stand.
I'm going to push. You know, this is what we do. We fight Bikram. Just hang. So
I was going to join
I'd
the ball, but I was going to push back. Can I push back once, Lou?
okay. Yeah, sure. You're the
Oh,
You
host.
okay.
know,
Fine. You
I,
push
I'm going
back.
to push back on this. Sorry, Lou. When you say it's not a long-lived industry, I thought agave spirits was a very long-lived industry. No, not
Well,
very well known, maybe, but in the outside world, is that what you're going to say, Lou?
That was the beginning of it, Bikram. But
Okay.
then I would have double slammed down. I would have like done the full compression body, and I said, and Java. The real
Uh,
problem is that so much of these spirits are made in a pre-industrial way, which means that unless you travel the entire country of Mexico, you could, and even and do that for 100 years, you're not going to have a clear picture of what every community is doing. It's so much harder to define because it's not cookie cutter. It's not made by machines, though
well,
it can be made by machines.
it is tremendously elusive, and I will agree with that. Yes, it's been around for nobody quite knows for how long, maybe 400 years, maybe 300 years, we don't know, but not as an industry itself, as a craft, as an expression, as an extension of your biodiversity. So I think like the way I like to define industry is when you systematize knowledge, right? And then you're able to replicate Bacardi in Puerto Rico or in a Mexico City operation. And that is just not feasible. I mean, it's not only, you're not only choosing yeasts, to give an example in fermentation, you're inviting any yeast that it's available in your environment to the party. So you're just like throwing a coin and praying and guessing that those G's are gonna come and interact with this agave are gonna bring the best out of it. And you know in a capacity because you've been doing this. I mean, it always cracks me up. Now you talk to a mezcalero and you're like, so are you a maestro? Do you have like the credentials to be called an expert? They're like, no, I've only been doing this for 15 years.
Yeah.
Like this is just the start of my journey. Maybe in another 40 years, you maybe can call me something of a higher standard.
Right.
So it is, it's definitely an elusive craft, the one we have dedicated ourselves to.
Mhm. So how does what is sacred then? Obviously, I can understand agave road trip that there is not much. If you want to do research, there's not much available. You can go just Google it. It'll be the same article again and again, possibly because the information is very limited. The number of people writing and knowing about it is limited. So the knowledge base is there, but maybe it's not disseminated in a wide manner, like for rum history or Scotch or bourbon. There's so much out there. So what are you guys trying? One is that aspect, and what is sacred? Because I think that's also very important and intertwined with what you folks are doing. So if you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah,
Good
so
to learn.
aside from what I said at the beginning before Chava was with us, I would also say that like what I think in a nutshell, Sacred is an attempt to clean up the mess that we are making. A lot of people, for some reason, you don't hear people talking about sustainability in rum or in whiskey or in vodka, or at least I don't. Maybe you hear that, Bikram. But
Yes.
everybody talks about with tequila and mezcal brands, what's your sustainability plan? And the truth is, our friend, when you were showing us your store, you went by some La Venenosa bottles, right? And our friend Esteban, and that's his brand. What he said to me once, and I thought was really wise, was don't talk about sustainability because none of this is sustainable. Once you put something into a glass bottle and you ship it on a truck, it's not sustainable because it's using fossil fuels and there's no more dinosaurs, so you can't replace the fossil fuel. But you can talk about best practices. And so what we attempt to do is go around and support families who are attempting. Let me put a fine point on it, right? So you get these large multinational companies coming into Oaxaca and buying up brands for millions of dollars, and that's a bet. And the bet is playing on the come, if you will, that they are going to be able to grow. Well, in order to continue to grow, in order to make back the money that they spend, on that brand, they need to ensure that they can keep making mezcal. Well, how do you ensure you keep making mezcal? That's agave. If you don't have the sugar source, you can't make mezcal. So they have to secure, they don't know how much because it takes 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 years for agave to reach
15,
maturity.
20.
40, older than I am. And so it can take so long for it to reach maturity that you need to protect that investment by locking down as much agave as you can. Now, don't hear this as an indictment of multinational corporations. We're the ones who were saying do this. And they're doing it for us. They'll sell us. They won't give it to us. They'll sell us what we want. That's the agreement that, hey, welcome to capitalism. So they lock down their agave supplies, but in doing so, what they're doing is they're buying up the farms from which for decades families have been purchasing the agaves for their small family palenques, their little distilleries. And suddenly these families find themselves incapable of accessing the source material they need in order to continue their family's heritage and the cultural heritage of the communities that they live in. So what we've been doing is buying agave seedlings grown from seed, these Tobala agave from this community called Zachila. It's about 20 minutes south of Oaxaca Centro. These seedlings are grown at a middle school in a community literally built on a garbage dump site. And then we give these seedlings away to these same families who are, oh, look at that, to these same families who are having trouble accessing agave as a result of our consumption of more and more Oaxacan espadín. So,
and and I will say that that's definitely one of the phases or the areas of sacred. But I think the part that excites me the most about this is that we also, I mean, it's a little what you were saying, Bikram. This is centuries of knowledge synthesized in groups of people that understand how to make beautiful spirits out of their environment without destroying their environments. And that's why they've been able to do this for centuries. Otherwise, they will have lived for 50 years doing the spirits, and then it will be an archaeological site, right? It wouldn't be something that we can still consume to this day.
I
So I
and
mean,
they
think,
yeah.
and they apply that knowledge to how they access water, how they access food, how they access the world, which I think is what we're gonna need to relearn how to do that. And if we chase them back into our world, if we just consume them into our world, we lose this base of knowledge that I don't think we can afford to lose as a species.
yeah.
Correct. Correct. That's absolutely wonderful. And I think, we need to bring you guys closer to us. And us, I mean, is the people who are
Are
part of.
you asking for a hug, Bikram?
Yes,
Because
I'm
I'm
asking for
in.
a hug. Yes, a group
I'm in.
hug. So two things I think just to bring this to, because I know time is limited for you folks here. A couple of things we can do. One is on October 6th,
This Thursday.
this Thursday, day after tomorrow, we are going to have you folks on, Zoom called similar to this, but you'll be on the screen, and there'll be people here who can ask questions directly, and you can answer, them while we're having various cocktails made by Agave Spirits and possibly some rum from Mexico. And then on December 3rd, we are going to have, I don't want to disclose too much. At the same time, we want to have some spirits which are never been tasted, or maybe just a handful of people in the entire world in the US have tasted that, from very specific communities that reflect some of these artisanal sustaining models that we're talking about. And also, not only, let's talk about some of the other things that we are planning to do on December 3rd.
Oh, are we talking
Whoever
about the
wants to go.
cocktail ingredients? Are
Yeah.
we talking about so something that has happened to us is that, and I think this has been a recurring theme in our conversations lately, is we're realizing that we love agave spirits, but what we really love is the environments and the ecosystems that support everything needed to make these agave spirits. It turns out there's a bunch of other agricultural and beautiful products that can be used for making what I would like to call like a heritage cocktail, a cocktail which every ingredient it's connected to a complex, healthy ecosystem, and that you're not using simple syrup that they're also using in Domino's. Nothing wrong with Domino's, but it's not the same kind of language. So we are making a scavenging hunt, finding some of these ingredients that we shall not mention right now, but that we're gonna bring with us that day. Was that
In
part of
essence-
what we're supposed to say?
Yeah, that's cool. And maybe a little bit more hint, like, there's a type of vinegar you talked about too.
Yeah, so we're going to bring two different kinds of vinegar, one of which is just literally, it's just fermented straight up from the mucilage from the cacao pod. People talk about you have to ferment cacao in order to make chocolate, and you don't. You pickle it, and you pickle it because you've got this sugar source that's inside the same pod that becomes, when you break it open, the same way that agave is consumed, the sugars from agave are consumed by wild yeast. Same thing with the sugars in this mucilage from the cacao pod, and it turns into first alcohol and then vinegar and runs off. And we had them put a giant bucket underneath one of the cacao fermenters, and nobody's been bringing this in. Nobody uses this. It literally it's waste material. We're going to be giving all of your customers waste material from rural Mexico, and it's the most delicious. I sent it. You've got this company out there called American Vinegar Works that's making incredible vinegars, and I sent a sample to Rodrigo, who owns the company, and he says he can't stop tasting it. Every time he tastes it, he tastes something different.
It is crazy, because when you try it just without dilution, it's like soy sauce. You're like, what the hell is going on? And then you dilute it and becomes fruity. So you go from soy sauce to fruitiness, which is just like, unheard of.
And this is just one of the vinegars we're bringing. We're going to bring so many alcohol treats to you.
Yes.
That's absolutely amazing. And, I can't wait. And I'm sure anybody watching this is not going to wait. So let's kind of connect again day after tomorrow, and get to know a little bit more about what you folks do, bring the message to a wider audience. And then looking forward to December 3rd.
Sounds
Awesome.
great, Bikram.
Great, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yeah. See you guys soon.
Hasta
Bye.
pronto.
Bye.